How did you attract or address your audience?
To attract our audience, we made sure it matched up with our target audience research. We did open-ended questionnaires, so I could retrieve detailed information about what they would like to see included in the film, so as anyone from my target audience would be appealed to it and want to watch it. As we can see by our questionnaires, we took our research and used what our target audience was saying at our theme, for example, to meet where the boss and the hitman should meet up, and the majority of our target audience said they should meet up in a pub, so that is what we did. And we dressed our characters in the way in which our target audience also would like them to see. They like to see the hitman in a suit with a tie looking a bit scruffy, and the hitman looking very the boss. And as you can see here by our questionnaires, we took our research and used what our target audience was saying at where our hitman and boss should meet up, and that was a pub. So we did what they wanted us to do, and we dressed our characters in the way which our open questions specified. So our hitman was dressed quite scruffy with his shirt all hanging out and his tie loose, and the boss was dressed nice and smart with his tie looked to the top, shirt tucked in, etc. And aiming the themes and conventions and how we carry out our media production is important, because then we can attract our target audience and effectively actually make money off the production, which is one of the main aims of making it in the first place.
I think attracting the audience, I think we use a sort of a storyline that would sort of appeal to a lot of people, like the whole aspect of a sort of a retired hitman then having to possibly go on this mission of like the dilemma of possibly killing your son and what that causes. Like, I think a lot of people would enjoy the fact of like sort of what would happen.
Relate to it, can't they?
Yeah, like I think that sort of storyline hasn't particularly been done before, like to my knowledge. So I think it's sort of original and like in the fact that a lot of people would want to find out what sort of happens or like what sort of dilemmas that would bring up.
So when we were thinking of like initial ideas, like relating back to Henry's point, when we were conducting the questionnaire and when we were compiling it together, I think it was very important that we asked them what they were expected from the title of Hitman. Like, if we were going to use Hitman like consistently throughout the opening sequence, like what would they expect from the word Hitman? Like, what would you think like would come with that, with like a storyline wise? And then we would develop this idea through a possible storylines and characters which would then engage with the audience so they could relate with them, and then they would then be interested into watching the full feature-length film.
Yeah. I think, going back to the previous question we spoke about our audience and who it would be, Henry said about maybe our whole audience mostly, for the main part, being males, and I think the fact we've only got a male cast would kind of maybe make them relate to it. I think the father-son relationship of the plot maybe can make the older people, maybe about 4 the same age as the hitman perhaps, relate to how they would fit at that point. I mean, of course men obviously would like the idea of a femme fatale because that whole idea is obviously that she's seductive and whatnot. But I think the fact that our audience is 15 plus and we've got male cast, I think that relationship might be there.
What have you learned about technologies from the process of constructing this project?
I think more than anything we learned how to properly use a camera, because in one of the clips of filming there was some static noise and we had to learn how to edit that out when we were editing. But I think if we perhaps changed the settings on the camera properly, we wouldn't have had to do that. And I think also more things with the camera is that when we need to make sure when filming about the little things, like we saw a reflection in one of the glasses of in the glass of one of the people filming, and I think again it's just carelessness perhaps about using the camera.
Yeah, on our part, and just learning from our mistakes to correct them for the next one. I learned how to use the camera effectively, like better than I could at GCSE. Like filming from the angles and like making sure that what we were filming was correct, that if it was over the shoulder you could still see the both people in shot, that you weren't just cutting somebody out so you could focus on somebody, so that you could see everything that you needed to see. I used the camera freehand to kind of pan, and although it was a bit wobbly because it's not something I'm too experienced at, we managed to edit that to stabilise the picture. So again, through editing, we've learned more of how we can improve our final piece.
Yeah, so I think if we had a bit more advanced technology, obviously we don't because we're only at school, but maybe the pans we do would maybe a bit more effective, maybe a bit more steady. But for the equipment which we had, I think we did the best of what we could, yeah.
I think what I learnt most is the sort of the editing process. Like I learnt a lot more, almost like little tricks that I can do to make it almost look more professional, and to then like obviously edit out the sort of the noise that you were talking about, the whole how it's all grainy and stuff. I think that obviously would have helped if we had sort of a more superior sort of editing software, but we had to use what we were given really.
What I learned about technology, like personally, for myself, was like how to operate a camera, basically, because considering most of our shots were like taken at night, I think it was very important that we like successfully adjusted the brightness and the contrast settings on the camera, so you'd achieve the shot that you would want. And then I think it was also important that we successfully used the lighting equipment, because originally I think it was quite difficult to set up because it would often produce like reflections and in like windows and mirrors, and then now we had to like kind of adjust so we would know where like it would be suitable to place the lighting equipment and where it would maximise its effect on the camera.
I think another one is that we should have really used a mic when recording the dialogue, because I think a problem that we all found is that the background noise from the actual bar
Either take him out or
weren't sort of extras, they were actual people in a bar. That sort of drowned out some of the dialogue that we originally had, so we had to sort of, through editing, we had to sort of vamp up the noise from the dialogue and reduce the background noise, and that we found that. I found that
even without using a mic, it's probably just carelessness, not quite thinking about where we put the camera, because we could have put the camera closer so the microphone on the camera could pick up the dialogue of the characters and not so much the background noise. But for a lot of the time, I think we would have positioned it a couple of further feet away and just zoomed in to get the shot we needed. We could have moved the camera forward and not zoomed the camera at all.
Yeah, I like that. I think it definitely is carelessness, because we need to think more about the shots we're taking, the effect it will have, how it will be in editing, as opposed to just taking it, right, that looks good, carry on. I think we need to look back and actually think about where the camera is. Like say, if having the camera so far away from the people, obviously we're not going to be able to hear them. We didn't really think about that. We just thought maybe that this shot.
If you've got a lot of shots, then you've got more to work with like during the editing process. So you think that you can adjust it, but then like even then we had to learn like how to include like transitions and like cutting and organising the clips together as well during the editing process.
So it's best to have too many clips than not enough to try and do everything.
First time this year I used iMovie, and because collectively as a class we started off editing the Mac suite, and I honestly didn't have a great time with it. I found it very unclear, and it was unnecessarily different from other software that I'd used, as if it's trying to be too different. I found it hard to navigate and find what I wanted, and then when you could find something, it had very limited choice. For example, text, there wasn't very many text options that you had, and you couldn't do what you wanted to do with the text. There was the font sizes for one text and another. There would be different sizes, and you could only put it in the middle, the left or the right of the screen. So you didn't have very many options of where you could put the text. So in our final piece it definitely showed, because I found it hard to put the text on the screen where I wanted it to go. I had much more enjoyment last year during GCSE using Serif. I found it much more advanced, user-friendly, and I had a wider range of editing options.
I feel the exact same with that. I think Serif was, maybe have something to do with in the Mac suite that it wasn't updated to what it was the actual
the
latest software. Yeah. So I think if that was the case, then maybe it might have been a bit better. But I think definitely think Serif was a lot better to use than iMovie.
Looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you've learnt in progression from it to the full product? Since GCSE, when I first started media, my skills have improved in abundance. I've had a great pleasure using the cameras or the equipment such as tripods and dolly, which is great to learn. I've learned how to use the cameras properly with the angles and what shot works best for the particular scene and what settings I need to put the camera on, and also not to change the camera midway through filming the final product, because we did that last year and you could definitely tell the quality between using one camera and a different camera.
One's newer, isn't it?
Yeah. Which is a mistake we made last year in GCSE, but we changed that in A level and we stuck to the Canon camera which we're using right now. I've also learned how to use the best lighting, and if I needed extra lighting, how to subtly add extra lighting without it being noticeable that it's prosthetic, that it's added in. In the first task in GCSE, we had 2 ambitious plans with the technology that we had at our disposal. For instance, we tried to do kind of a Borderlands style character introduction where the character would be in shot, it would freeze, and then it would be their body with a background and an introduction of their name. But we weren't anywhere near as experienced enough with any technology to do that, nor could we have the technology to do that. So it didn't pull off how we originally had it in mind, but we adapted around it, and this time around when we had more subtle ideas, it played out much better and the final product was much more professional. Our storyboards became much more in depth and it showed our ideas more clearly. Our planning was much more precise, and in our production we were filming more clips so that we had more in our final edit to pick out what we wanted, and this improved our whole final piece. When we picked up our planning, it helped our production, and then our production helped our final piece. And when we referred to it during the filming, our planning, it helped us do the filming as well.
Yeah, I think in GCSE, I think we were too ambitious with what we were actually doing. I think this year, I think we kept it a lot more simple, and I think sometimes simple is better instead of trying to do we were way out of our comfort zone. We just weren't.
We had amazing ideas, great, loads of ideas, but just didn't have
quality executed.
Yeah,
I think it's good to be ambitious, but you can't have ideas that are unachievable. I think
the execution needs to be better than the ideas before. So I think the way that we've done it more simple this time round, I think it's made our product more professional.
Yeah.
And the fact I can admit to mine was very unprofessional. It wasn't from my view, I don't think it was very good. So I think this time I'm more proud of the product that I made.
Yeah, I think we need to be. Well, this year in A-Level we've been a lot more prepared than I think we were in GCSE, because when we were filming our GCSE production, I think we didn't take a script to our filming. We didn't do a lot of things. We did things that maybe weren't as good as we should have done.
Stuck to a shooting schedule.
Yeah, and I think this year, taking a script, we can go by the script and make sure we haven't missed anything off. Because last year, I know we missed a few things off, and we had to just deal with what we had because there wasn't enough time to do more filming. So I think, we were definitely more prepared this year, knowing exactly what we'd be doing and knowing what to come. Whereas the first year was more of a surprise.
Yeah. Like the rest of us have said, I think this year our whole group work as a whole is generally more refined from GCSE, where it was quite instantaneous and quite just do it on the spot really. Whereas now we've put proper planning into it, and we've now learned that planning is just as important as the actual production when you're shooting it or when you're editing it. And then personally, I feel like I've learned the most about the cameras as a whole. I think that I've developed a better technique when I first started GCSE, which would now just prove invaluable when I was trying to make difficult shots through windows or inside or outside.
I think the ideas that we had at GCSE were great. It was great to have the ideas, but we never thought about what the final piece would actually be put together.
The bigger picture.
Yeah, the bigger picture when everything came to editing, when everything was done, when we cut everything down, what would it actually look like? But I think we did that this year. We thought about it with our storyboards. As I mentioned, they improved, and we could see what we were putting together, and when we knew that they were good ideas and nothing too extravagant, the final piece looked very good.
I think we had all quite. I think for film we have all quite a good vision about what we want, and I think it all quite came together towards the end. So we all knew what everyone wanted it to look like, and we all had in our heads how it was going to be before it was filmed, and it went actually really well. I think went to plan.
Yeah, I think it's because we planned sort of an idea that's realistic to actually pull off. Like in the our GCSE, I think we planned way too extravagant. I think we were way too out there with our ideas that it wasn't realistic to pull off with the equipment that we had. Really,
it's great to have these big ideas, but unless you have, obviously we don't have the big budgets like a game like I said Borderlands, which the idea was going for, would be like, but we don't have that £1 million software where we can all edit it. We just need to. We've got what we have.
Sari, thank you very much for listening to our evaluation on Killing Time.